Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy BDELL. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Today, we're going to be talking about how human technological creation is the application of spiritual knowledge that is associated with the forces of nature that's predicated upon two different principles: survival and necessity, which is the mother and father of invention and creation that leads to self-preservation. Now, all this is esoterically acclimated to the pyramids of Giza that lead to Hollow Earth when you're talking about the city of Shambhala and Nargartha, when you're talking about the Ark of the Covenant and interstellar vortex portals. Now, one thing you got to understand about pyramids are basically terrestrial power plants that extracts energy from the magnetosphere and then siphons energy from the etheric network of the Ethereum cosmic mother. So that is basically the personification of squaring a circle, which is an alchemical process to unlock the keys of the universe of the 3, 6, and the 9. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, get your notes out. You already know what time it is. So everybody's been talking about these pyramids, right? And they just came out with a CIA documentation talking about how they just found the Ark of the Covenant. Now, when you understand this from a metaphysical standpoint, everything that's based on the external stimulation is based on distractions and illusions. So everything they basically telling you is actually internal, because by way of internal stimulation, that's when you activate your spiritual capabilities by way of the pyramids, by way of the Ark of the Covenant, by way of these interstellar vortex portals, right? So get your notes out for this video, because this is going to be one of those videos. It's going to put everything in full spectrum as far as like information and knowledge that is applied to the timeline of eschatology and the timeline of biblical prophecy. Now, they say that scientists' study reveals a massive structure underneath the Egyptian pyramids, right? Because like I said, remember I was telling you guys about the subterranean kingdoms of the city of Shambhala and Nargartha, because Hollow Earth basically denotes the fact that you have a city inside the planet called the Crystal City, because the Crystal City is basically an emulation of the magnetites and the dendrites. And Argartha is an emulation of the Golgotha, which is the place of the skull. So I don't want to spoil too much for you, but we finna get into it. Now, a great pyramid of Giza's hidden in the chamber is revealed. Scientists uncover mysterious big void in Egypt's 4,500-year-old monument that can reveal its ancient secrets, right? Because these ancient secrets is basically the Adept chambers, right? Peace to the Moors. Shout out to the, the Atlantean Moors, the ones that was connected to the 5 civilized tribes, right? I'm not talking about the Black Moors who took you out of your sovereign capacity. I'm talking about the indigenous Moors, who basically are the title holders of the geographical landmass of America for 1 million square miles, which is 640 acres of land. I'm talking about those. Because when you go to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali's teachings, he talks about how you got to go through the Adept chambers in order to become a master, because he got his edification from ancient Kemet, right? He studied the hieroglyphics. He studied everything intuitively to understand the 7 principles of the Circle 7, right, in the Moorish paradigm. So, well, we're talking about the Adept chambers, right? It's a process, 3 different processes. You go from neophyte adept to master. So when you go to the adept chambers and you master all forms of your 7 energy cortexes of what you call the astrolati body of the light body, when you tap into the apex of your Zohar body, what happens is you get access to Hollow Earth. That's why the great majority of the pyramids are basically leading to the subterranean kingdom of the city of Shambhala, which means the scent of Allah, The word Shambhala means the scent of Allah, right? So with that being said, when you go through the ADEP chambers, the ADEP chambers basically denotes the fact that you understand the 7 principles and the 7 degrees of creation. And the 7 degrees of creation is predicated upon plant, animal, protoplast, man, beast, cherubim, and seraphim, right? Or what you call the Luciferian Anunnaki or the Elohim Anunnaki, right? So the 7 days of creation is also acclimated to the 7 days, and the 7 days is also connected to the 7 ethereal planes, and the 7 ethereal planes is also associated with the 7 energy cortexes of what you call your chakra system. And these chakra systems is in a fixed position reality that's based on a spinal upright column that goes through the heart and the mind to where you're basically energetically balanced. So this is a form of resurrection by way of going through the pyramids, right? So the fix is solved in ancient Sudia, and it basically denotes the fact that it's based upon light and wisdom, right? So you got to go through the ADEP chambers because the ADEP chambers are actually oracle chambers. So as I was telling you before, the law of detachment denotes the fact that you have the ability to resurrect yourself in a form of mastery. When you reach the apex of mastery by going through the ADEP chambers, which is the oracle chambers, that's when you get access to hollow earth. That's why the pyramids go so deep inside the ground, because the only way out is actually in, right? Because as above, so below, when you understand the emerald tablets of Thoth, right? And within the factions of these tombs, right, they have these tombs that vibrate at 111 frequency megahertz, which is a healing frequency that can basically restore the mitochondrial DNA by cell growth proliferation. And cell growth proliferation is one of those things to where the DNA is not able to break down intrinsically because it's basically the holy frequency. The holy frequency is the holy grail. The holy grail is equilibrium, which is God, right? By way of the factions of the mind. So that is why, when you go through these tombs, right, it resurrects the body to where it transmutes the carbon body back into a magnesium-based state, which is why Osiris was actually green, because when you break down the etymological roots of the word Osiris in different languages, it means El Qadir, which is the green one. He was the green one because he had magnesium-based blood, because he had access to the chambers by going through these, chambers to get to hollow earth, right? And that's basically in connection with the green children of Woolpit who came up to the surface when they was in the Netherlands, right? Because their physiology and their pigmentation was green, right? So that basically restores the mitochondrial DNA by way of when you're going through the chambers. Because like I said, the healing frequency, the God frequency, the Holy Grail is within the factions of the chambers of the pyramids, right? Because the reason why it basically restores the DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, by way of cell growth proliferation, what happens is it transmutes the carbon body into a magnesium-based state, because the magnesium coats the blood cells to where it basically doesn't break down intrinsically when you get oxidation, right? So it basically coats the hemoglobin cellular structure to where it doesn't break down. So within the factions of the chambers, it's a healing frequency that vibrates at 111 frequency hertz, right? So now, remember I was telling you the healing frequency or the holy frequency is also associated with the Ark of the Covenant, because the Ark of the Covenant is actually a device that gives a electromagnetic power to the pyramids. So the Ark of the Covenant is really the personification of the sephnoid bone, right? Now, the sephnoid bone is also acclimated to the place of the skull, which is Golgotha, which is associated with Argartha, which is inside hollow earth, right? So one thing you got to understand, like I said, everything that they basically telling y'all in the news is basically a form of external stimulation by way of distractions, because everything they're basically telling you is actually within the factions of your physiology. We are the Crystal City. We are Agartha. We are, the Black Sun. We are the Ark of the Covenant. We are the pyramids. Because when you break down etymology of the word pyramid, it means fire in the middle, which is basically the personification of a tetrahedron, right? That has a textual angular radiation. And that radiation activates the soul of man, which is Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple is activated by way of the Ark of the Covenant, which is the sphenoid bone, which is basically the holy seat or the holy grail of the magnum opus of creation that is acclimated to your neurological faculties that activates the magnetites and the dendrites in the brain, which is basically the embodiment of the crystal city that's basically inside hollow earth that is activated by way of the black sun that's connected to the etheric network. That's all within the factions of who you are neurologically and biologically, right? Mind, body, and soul. So you have to harmonize with these energies that's coming in. So this is why they're telling you, oh, we got these chambers underground. Oh, we just found the Ark of the Covenant. Oh, we just found the Crystal City. They talking about you. That's in your genetics. Oh, we just found, that's the black sun. The black sun is inside you because as we get to the apex of solar cycle 25 and we go back to the galactic center, that's when you're going to unlock the 7 chambers, right? To where you get access to hollow earth, which is basically your internal self, right? Because we are a microcosm of a macrocosm. That's what you must understand. So I'm going to show you a video on how they was talking about the pyramids and the Ark of the Covenant. And everything is going to come full circle because everything they telling you in these westernized publications and the media or whatever is actually corresponding with your genetics. It has nothing to do. The Ark of the Covenant is not even real. It was never lost. It's the sphenoid bone, which is basically the seat of the pineal gland. The pineal gland is a representation of the black sun. The black sun is Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is Christ walking on water by way of resurrection, right? That's what's taking place. So the Ark of the Covenant, these energies is coming in, is going to give power to these pyramids. So this is why I say that human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter because when the pyramids are turned on, it turns on the energetic frequency of the soul. When your soul is turned on, that activates the holy grail, the pineal gland, that manipulates the space-time continuum by way of a quantum fluctuation that creates inflation within the ethers that creates interface transitions. So I'm going to show you this video. If you're new to this channel, guys, please hit the subscribe button. This is some information that nobody is telling y'all. So yeah, it's imperative that we get this information out. Because everything they telling y'all is associated with our genetics. They want you to look outward. They don't want you to know that hollow earth is within your physiology. They don't want you to know that Crystal City is within your neurological faculties. They don't want you to know that the Ark of the Covenant is actually in your head, right? The place of the skull, Golgotha, right? Which is where Jesus was crucified on Mount Calvary. That's the place of the skull, right? When you break down etymology, that's why you got to understand that everything that's connected to monotheistic religious systems is associated and corresponding with your chakra system and your genetics, right? So I'm going to show you this video. They talking about the pyramids. And then we're going to get into the Ark of the Covenant. Hold on for a second, guys. All right. Here we go.
The age-old question. How did the Egyptians build the pyramids? Perplexing historians all the way back to ancient Greece, stumping Napoleon's archaeologists, and becoming the butt of jokes today.
Did this start at the top and work down, or start at the bottom and work up?
Although we're fairly sure they started at the bottom, we still don't know exactly how they did it. There are all kinds of theories, ramps, cranes, and, yes, aliens.
Probably extraterrestrials.
Now we're getting a new potential answer, one a little more grounded in reality. Water. Researchers just published a study suggesting that hydraulic force could have helped build the step pyramid for Pharaoh Djoser more than 4,600 years ago.
See, one thing you also got to understand that is that step pyramids predate the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, right? Which basically denotes the fact that the pyramids in the Americas are also in alignment with the Orion star constellation, right? Just about every pyramid on the planet is connected to the Orion star constellation, right? Because it's activated by the Tesla coils. We're going to get into that because those are the keys of the universe, the 3, 6, and the 9. That's why there's a trilateral connection of the 3 pyramids at the Giza Plateau that's basically in alignment with the Orion star constellation that is comprised of a trilateral connection of a trinary star system with the three suns, which is called Utu, Apshu, and Shamash, right? Or the red star Kachina or the blue star Kachina, when you're talking about the Hopi prophecy that is connected to our yellow sun, right? Because these energies from the sun is going to activate these pyramids. Once these pyramids is activated, it's going to activate your physiology that basically corresponds with the Ark of the Covenant.
It's the oldest of the 7 monumental pyramids in Egypt and was at the time the largest structure, coming in at 204 feet. That's King or Pharaoh LeBron James stacked head to toe more than 30 times. Some of those stones weighing more than 600 pounds. The researchers now say the internal architecture of the pyramid supports a new theory, a hydraulic lift.
The Express now, and 9 out of 10 young people are totally deluded about the pyramids and think they were built by humans, Paul.
Yeah, it says this. 1 in 10 young adults believe the pyramids of Giza were built by aliens. That's because they were, Leo. Massive, giant, racist aliens that made...
See, one thing about westernized media, they always trying to make an example by way of, having a comedic type of commentary. You know what I'm saying? Because they want you to think that everything is basically a joke, right? But as we get to the apex of the Great Awakening period, we're going to see who's laughing. Because in order to get access to the chambers, you have to have a certain genetic format. And everybody doesn't have neuromelanin. As I was telling you, the brain essential nervous system melanin is connected to the fascia system. So that means that your nervous system has to be vibrating at a certain frequency in order to get access to the stargates that lead to Hollow Earth, or within the factions of your physiology when you want to activate that pineal gland, right? Everybody don't have access to that energy. So like I said, the sun doesn't lie. So like I said, everything is based on the race of the sun. If you're not able to withstand the UV radiation light spectrum, what you think is going to happen to your physiology as we get closer to the sun, as we get back to the galactic center, right? What you think is going to happen? Because a fifth dimensional civilization is galvanized by the sun, the energy of the sun, because the moon is what subjugated the fifth dimensional civilization, because it's a limited way of it's a limited reality, meaning that you're basically boxed in. So when you think outside the box, that's when you square the circle or you circle the square, because a square and a circle is able to live on 2 different dimensional planes at the same time, because the circle is the embodiment of the sun and the square is the embodiment of the moon, because the moon is what controls physical reality. So when we get back to the galactic center, that's when you tap into the star Polaris that activates these pyramids, right?
The Jewish people build the pyramids. I don't know if that's true or not. And the Express don't know either, but I'll tell you what the Express don't know. It's because no one actually really knows exactly how the pyramid...
And it's impossible for a Jebusite, which is part of the Canaanite faction, to build the pyramids, because they only been on the planet for about 6,000 years, right? Because they was basically genetically spliced in 4086 BC on the island of Patmos, because they're basically a genetic mutation of the Colochians, who are known as the Ab-Khazarian Black Caucus, right? That's where they came from, right? So they didn't build the pyramids. Anybody that's connected to the Canaanite bloodline did not build no pyramids. They are basically the newest people on the planet by way of genetics.
Are built. It's way beyond the scope of the technology available at the time. I mean, I know they say that, lots of people drag things up on logs or whatever. Have you seen the things? It's incredible. So, I mean, the point of this story really is that, children and young adults have got access to the internet, and therefore they're getting to see all sorts of conspiracy theories and different versions of the news. And do you know what? They can figure it out for themselves.
I mean, Lewis, what do you think? I mean, this is a slur on your people who did a fantastic job.
Well, supposedly, I've just been told we didn't build the pyramids. We built some storehouses nearby, whatever. But we still haven't gotten paid for it. So, I think they say the Jews are good business people, but we still haven't gotten paid for it. But this story basically is one of those stories that says nobody knows anything about anything. Nobody knows about the pyramids. I'm surprised that even this many people know.
You certainly get that impression watching this show.
Yeah, and it says this study was commissioned by who? by the Sega Europe Limited, which is a computer games company. They're promoting their you got to read closely. This is
just a press release to promote some pyramid games.
To promote some computer.
You know what it is?
Now, how were Egypt's pyramids built in a remote desert? Now, the pyramids in and around Giza have presented a fascinating puzzle for millennia. And now the scientists have finally, it appears, solved this riddle. And our next report tells you how to have a lost branch of the river Nile could actually help solve this long-standing question of how the pyramids of Giza were built. Take a look.
Or did aliens help them? We've seen all sorts of theories, but it looks like scientists finally have the answer. And it's a simple one. The Egyptians used the Nile, the river. But here's the catch. The modern-day river lies 8 kilometers away from the Giza pyramid. So how did it work? Our next report solves the mystery for you.
Imagine a time 4,500 years ago. No cars, no machines, no cranes, no modern technology. In the vast span of the Sahara Desert rose the pyramids of Egypt. They are monumental tombs, relics of Egypt's Old Kingdom era. The pyramids were built to stand for eternity, and they have. But how did Egyptians build them? How did they carry such heavy structures? It's been an age-old mystery. And scientists may have finally found the answer to it. The answer is far from mundane. Yet it is marvelously human. It turns out the ancient Egyptians used...
Yeah, now they starting to look, they want to put out the real people who look like the real ancient Egyptians, because at first, the ones that they used to show you on the movies or whatever, they look like $5 Indians, right? Real Egyptians, I hate the word Egypt because Egypt is actually a Greek term that is connected to Greco-Roman culture. So I prefer the word ancient Kemet. So when you look at these ancient Kemites, they was, really dark. They was not light-skinned. And they had woolly hair. They didn't have straight hair.
Water. But the question is how? Right now, the Nile is located about 8 kilometers from the pyramids of Giza. So how did the ancient Egyptians use it? Well, they did use the Nile, but not the modern river that we know today. They used a now buried branch of the Nile that was then flowing right by the pyramids. It's called the Aramat branch. Data suggests it was around 64 kilometers long, around 700 meters wide. It is said to have bordered 31 pyramids. This was used by ancient Egyptians as a waterway. Workmen traveled through it. Materials were sent via this river. So how did researchers find this hidden branch? They used a combination of radar satellite data, geophysical surveys, and soil.
See, like I said, they're going to keep putting it out in the forefront, right? Because everything they're doing is according to their timeline. They done told you about, the celestial alignments that took place. I'm going to show you the Ark of the Covenant video now. So that way we can stay on board with the transmission. Now, remember I was telling you guys, you had the Pope. He opened up the papacy keys of the cosmic energy, right? That was basically an encryption over the planet, right? So when he used the cosmic keys of papacy, of the silver key and the golden key, he did that on New Year's Eve. Then you fast forward to January, you had the conjunction of planets that was basically lined up on January 21st. That was 6 planets. Then you had the 7 planets of the planetary alignment on February. Now we're in March. Now they're telling you about the pyramids that lead to chambers and hollow earth. And now they're telling you about the Ark of the Covenant, right? It seems like a sequence of events that's actually taking place according to the timeline, because I was telling you, we're basically in that 7-year tribulation period. So the time of revealing is going to be taking place intrinsically. And the reason that is because you have Neptune in Aries for about 15 years now. That is basically the embodiment of spiritual revolution. Spiritual revolution takes place when you square the circle. When you square the circle, that's when you have the physical and the spiritual realm merge in together, to where you have the physical world reach the negative benefits of spiritual implications, right? This is why you had, over in Japan or China, you had those earthquakes and those buildings fell down, right? Or in Thailand, right? A 7.7 earthquake, right? 7.7, that's the God frequency, right? Because that energy is being extracted from the magnetosphere. That's the ether. The dodecahedron that basically embodies all forces of nature to shake up the planet, that is connected to the seven thunders, right? The seven thunders is the seven bowls, and the seven bowls is connected to a form of human consciousness when you're talking about the seven energy cortexes. When you have a certain people in alignment, that's going to cause destruction on the planet, because human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. Physical matter is the physical world, right? Because like I said, God is a frequency, it's a mind. It's an energy, it's the electromagnetic radiation around the brain. That's what they want to subjugate, right? This is why you have the rise of artificial intelligence. They want to subjugate that energy, because you got to understand that physical destruction is facilitated by spiritual energy that's transmuted from the cosmos. So the more that we speak truth to power, because the tongue is energetically connected to the heart. So only words from the heart can reach the heart. So if you speak in love and truth, you're going to manipulate the timeline by way of inflation of the quantum fluctuation, right? So the more you speak truth to power, the more you project, positive thoughts in the ethers that travels on 0 point energy fields. That's when the physical world is going to, go in self-destruction mode, right? So that's why it's imperative for us to get in alignment, to create this cosmic convergence, to reverse the polarity of everything that was created by the energy of the moon and Saturn. Now, this video is talking about the Ark of the Covenant.
Succeeded in stealing the Ark of the Covenant from Solomon's temple.
Now, let me interject again. I told you, the pyramids is a representation of Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple is the soul of man. The soul of man is activated by the Tesla angular radiation, which is activated by Isis, Osiris, the Trinity, the three Trinity. And that Trinity in itself, like I said, it has a Tesla angular radiation that activates the fire in the middle, which is the pyramid. The pyramid is connected to the Ark of the Covenant, because the Ark of the Covenant is basically a device that basically gives power to the Holy Grail, or the God mind, right? Or Christ consciousness. But they're not telling you that the Ark of the Covenant is the sphenoid bone, which is basically the seat of the pineal gland, or the pine cone that was connected to the Vatican when he unlocked the keys of papacy, right? So that's why I said, this is why you've been seeing in the atmosphere, a lot of people been seeing the galactic center floating in the air, the Milky Way star constellation, right? Which is also known as the Earth zone. We're going back into a fifth dimensional energy, because when you go through the galactic center, that's when you connect with the star Polaris, which is the true spiritual sun, right? So these new energies coming in is going to activate the Ark of the Covenant, right?
He brought it back by another ruse. All of these stories are full of characteristically legendary tricks. But he put a replacement in.
At the bottom right here is the CIA documentation talking about the Ark of the Covenant, because the Project Sunstreak was basically a project on how they was going to use remote viewing in order to find the Ark of the Covenant. And they created a fake story in the CIA publication talking about the Ark of the Covenant is actually a device. No, it's in your head. It's the sphenoid bone, right? You got to do your own research. Everything they telling y'all is a form of external stimulation, which is illusions and distractions. So you got to see beyond that by doing your own independent research. So Project Sunstreak is also applied to Project Stargate, which is why they've been building a lot of these Stargates, because you have to have neuromelanin to activate the sphenoid bone, or the Ark of the Covenant, in order to get access to the Stargates. That's why they built that one in Detroit. St. Louis Ark is basically a Stargate. All these Stargates is going to be turned on when the pyramids are turned on by way of our consciousness.
in Jerusalem and conveyed the actual Ark of the Covenant by air. It was taken through the air at great speed to Axum. And the fact is that it is absolutely fundamental part of Ethiopian Christianity today. They still believe that the Ark of the Covenant is in Axum, and Axum is there. You can go there. They have hotels. You can stay there.
I just want you to know that Axum is actually another word for North and South Axum, which is basically America, right? Because you got to understand the inception of creation before the continental drift when you had Pangea. That process took place because that planetary alignment or that geographical area during that time period, it was going through a form of a reset. So you had many different floods before the flood of Noah. The planet went through a reset many different times, but they only tell you one time according to their monotheistic belief systems, which is basically European mythology. All lies.
You can see the building where the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be, but you can't see the Ark of the Covenant. They won't let you in. It's between an old and a new.
You can't get in. In order to get access to the Ark of the Covenant, you got to have neuromelanin. Because I told you, the Ark of the Covenant is in the head, the place of the skull, Golgotha, or Gartha, right?
Building of Mary of Zion. And this seems to be on the site of the original cathedral at Axum, which is where the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to have gone at the beginning. At any rate, you have a curious phenomenon that the Ark of the Covenant is still, for the faithful, resident in, and the Ark of the Covenant, as I should say, these are the tablets of the law, written by God. And
he's talking about the tablets, the 7 tablets of destiny. He said it was written by so-called God, because you become a God when your 7 tablets of destiny is activated, which is the scroll of all that's connected to the epigenetics, to where you unlock the Akashic records that is linked and tethered connected to the subconscious mind. Because like I said, God is the highest extension of the mind, which uses elements and matter to express itself. God is the mind, the highest frequency that is activated by quarks and leptons, and those quarks and leptons creates the Higgs boson particle, to where you break out of the VMAT2 gene, which is the vesicular monomind transporter 2 gene, right? Which gives you the propensity to believe in things outside of yourself. So when you break out of that box mentally, that's when you become a God. That's what the golden age is actually all about, where a human transmutes into the energy of God by way of the mind.
Are allegedly in Axum today.
The Ark of the Covenant, built by Moses to hold the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments at the command of God himself. In Jerusalem, it was the literal dwelling of the Most High, secreted in the darkness of the Holy of Holies for centuries. Then it disappeared. No one knows exactly where or when, but for more than 2.
Please shut up. You know this is why I say all they do is lie to y'all. This is how you know everything within the factions of the Bible in their religious systems, they're actually talking about genetics. They're talking about your physiology. They're talking about the human body. So the same thing applies on an esoteric level when they're telling you about pyramids, the Ark of the Covenant, and portals. They're talking about a certain frequency that a certain demographic of people has in order to get access to that energy, right? But who is to say, though? I know that Ark of the Covenant and all this stuff is associated with, our physiology and neurological faculties. But who's to say that these things are not actually real things, that the Ark of the Covenant is not actually real, right? But I do know for a fact that it's basically applied to the doctrine of signatures of your neurological faculties when you're talking about the cephaloid bone, which is basically the embodiment of the Ark of the Covenant, right? Because like I said, all they do is lie. They want you to be they don't want you to be internal. They want everything to be external.
2,000 years, the whereabouts of the Ark have been shrouded in mystery, despite countless attempts to track it down. There are many theories as to the whereabouts of the Holy Relic. Some say it's buried under the Temple Mount. Others contend it was carried to Egypt before being lost to history. Wherever it may be, the lost Ark of the Covenant has become one of the most sought-after Christian relics in history. On a recent trip to Africa, I met up with explorer Bob Cornuke, founder of the Bible Archaeology Search and Exploration Institute. He's been investigating a little-known theory about...
This is how you know that they're not from here, because they always looking for something, right? You're the newest people on the planet, and y'all always looking for something. Why y'all looking for stuff? Y'all manipulating, the energy of the universe. Y'all the reason why the universe is basically in an inverted state to where we got to go through the reset. All they do is messing up the ecosystem, manipulating the ecology of the planet, pulling minerals and resources out by way of archaeology, right? They're basically messing up the whole ecosystem of the planet by trying to go look for stuff that don't belong to them, right? Because if you was really from here, then why you going to look for it, right? If you claim that you are so-called the first people on this planet, right? When you're not.
About the Ark for over 10 years and agreed to let me tag along on another fact-finding adventure. A former crime scene investigator in Los Angeles, Bob has made a name for himself by searching for biblical relics based on the same techniques he used in law enforcement. Taking the Bible as a literal guide, he's traced the route of the Jewish exodus from Egypt, searched for Noah's Ark, and probed the mystery surrounding the true location of Mount Sinai. His Ark theory goes like this. Just before the Babylonians invaded Jerusalem in 586 BC, Levitical priests moved the Ark to Egypt to save it from being destroyed. After more than a century there, it was moved again all the way up the Nile River to Lake Tana in Ethiopia.
And this is where they say that they had the Ark and it rested right into where those trees are. We're going to go by.
Now, one of the main reasons why they moved it to Ethiopia, because when you got to look at the prefix of the word Ethiopia, Ethiopia comes from the word ether. Ether is the only way you can get access to activate the neuromelanin that is basically comprised of the saphenoid bone, which is the seat of the pineal gland, the holy grail, or the holy seat. You can't be holy until you become a whole brain thinker. And all that basically is only the fact that you can't have access to that energy until you activate the ether. In order to have access to the ether, you have to have neuromelanin, right? Non-ether.
Here right now, and as we go by with the boat, you're going to see where they actually say the Ark sat in a tent, very similar to the tabernacle in the wilderness.
The monks living on Tanakirkos Island haven't changed their worship or way of life for thousands of years. Even today, they dress in animal skins and live a primitive existence, farming the small island. They also spend more than 3 hours a day in prayer. The monks showed us relics that they say arrived with the Ark.
So these implements were said to be brought with the Ark from Solomon's temple. And this is the gomer that sits down. They put the blood in it, and then they would sprinkle the blood upon the Ark.
According to these men, their ancestors safeguarded the Ark here for 800 years. In that time, Ethiopia became a Christian nation, and after that, the king came and retrieved the Ark.
Because that's when the Hyksos, or you talking about the Greeks, that's when they infiltrated the land of Kush, right? That's why they got the Coptic cross in the geographical landmass of Ethiopia, right? That's why they stuck in Christianity. That's because the Greco-Roman culture came and infiltrated that landmass and took the Ark of the Covenant, which is a form of a spiritual cutoff, right? By getting them acclimated to a lunar doctrine that subjugates the mind, right? So this is why they got cut off from the non-ether. So it was basically in disconnection of the saphenoid bone, of their own Ark of the Covenant. That's what religion does. Religion is a manifestation blocker. Religion is a soul trap. Religion basically cuts off your spiritual gifts, right? Because now you're believing in stuff outside of yourself. That's what the religion was weaponized for. It wasn't only used for war strategy. It was used in a form of black magic to basically subjugate your genetics, because the religion can also create light code lockdown by way of indoctrination.
And took it to Oxum, where we're going next. The city of Aksum in northern Ethiopia was once the capital of the kingdom. Ancient kings built giant obelisks to mark their graves, which rival the pyramids in engineering genius. Legend has it that the Ark was brought here in about 400 AD and was placed in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. The only man allowed to see the Ark is a monk called the Guardian, who's never allowed to leave the church enclosure.
It's like a bunker. It's made out of cinder blocks, and they tell me that as you go in that door, that there's a corridor that goes to the left, then there's a corridor makes a sharp right turn, and then another sharp right turn coming back to where what they claim is the Ark of the Covenant, sitting in a big stone sarcophagus box with a silver ornate inlaid sleeve. So people say, why doesn't someone go in and get it? It'd be pretty hard to bring it out because they actually built the building around this object that they call the Ark of the Covenant.
We arrived in Aksum on the holiest day of the Ethiopian Orthodox calendar, the festival of Timkat. It's a day when tens of thousands of the faithful make a pilgrimage to Aksum, and a replica of the Ark is brought out of this church and paraded through the streets of the city. The people sing and dance before the procession, and the party lasts all night long. Timkat is like Easter and Christmas all wrapped into one. This is their festival, is the Epiphany, their most important holiday of the year. And these women will be out here all night long, worshiping, singing songs, praying. There's no doubt that this is a special place and a special time. The next morning, these revelers continue celebrating with songs and dances that haven't changed in millennia. It's a fascinating look into Old Testament-style worship that can't be found anywhere else in the world. At the end of the day, there's no way to know for certain if the Ark is here or not. But one thing is for sure, there's no...
Crazy how they doing all this tribal stuff and they still got these crucifixes on them. You know what I'm saying? That's how you know that landmass was heavily, infiltrated with indoctrination of religion, right? That's why they actually believe that the Ark of the Covenant is a device. They don't know that they have the Ark of the Covenant and they can have access to it when they unlock that VMA2 gene, the vesicular monomod transporter 2 gene, which gives you the propensity to believe in stuff outside of your internal self. Because once they understand what's going on for real, that's when they're going to tap in and they're going to manipulate the timeline over in that geographical area. Human consciousness manipulates physical matter.
Doubt whatsoever in the minds of these Ethiopian Christians.
Do I personally believe it? I don't know. I believe they either have the actual Ark of the Covenant mentioned in the Bible, or they have a replica that is so convincing that they've believed it to be the Ark of the Covenant for more than 2,000 years.
So that's that part of the video, and then we're going to get into the other video that basically shows you the embodiment of the Galactic Center. So, like I said, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Almost, 60% of the people who watches the channel, they do not, they don't subscribe. You always come back to watch the video, you might as well subscribe. I'm not asking y'all for nothing. So with that being said, like I said, the Ark of the Covenant has never been lost. It's within the factions of your skull. It's a skull system. It's called the sphenoid bone, right? So that's why the Ark of the Covenant actually works in tandem metaphysically with the pyramids, right? Because the pyramid, on an etymological standpoint, means fire in the middle, or Solomon's temple, the soul of man, the energetic frequency of the soul, the ether that amalgamates with the holy grail of the sphenoid bone to where you become a whole brain thinker. When you become a whole brain thinker, that's when you activate the crystal city. The crystal city is not actually inside the planet. It's within the factions of your neurological faculties that activates the neuroendocrine transducer by way of the magnetites and the dendrites in the brain, which is the 144,000 crystals, which is basically the embodiment of the crown of thorns on Jesus' head when he went through a process of resurrection. That's what this is talking about. So I showed you right here, like I said, the lost Ark of the Covenant is a decoy and a distraction. Bread and circus, which is basically a form of Roman semantics. The reality is that the place of the skull, the Golgotha, Argartha. Remember I was telling you, I'm gonna show you. Matter of fact, I think it's down here. Yes. You see the word Argartha. Argartha is really associated. I'm gonna scroll up. When you look at this at the top, where my cursor is, it says Golgotha. Because Golgotha inside Hollow Earth is actually Argartha, the place of the skull, resurrection. Jesus was crucified on Mount Calvary, right? So everything they telling y'all, they telling you that the Christ consciousness is here. It's internal. Y'all looking at this like y'all looking at, oh, they did the pyramids, oh, they found. Everything they telling y'all is within your genetics. That's all it is. That's all it is. So you have to think beyond the limitations of westernized indoctrination. You got to think outside the box, because the box is what keeps you here. The box is comprised of the holonomic brain theory, because your brain is tether connected to the simulation by way of gematria, right? Because we live in a pixelated, simulated reality, because the universe is mathematical. So the gematria body is acclimated to the brain. So this is why you be reincarnated by way of your belief systems, because they want you to believe in things outside of yourself to bring you back here. So when you understand that everything's internal, that's when you're going to reach the apex of the Zohar body. That's when you're going to unlock the scroll of all. You're going to unlock your fire in the middle. You're going to unlock your crystal city. You're going to unlock your black sun. All that is in you, right? So this is the fake CIA documentation they came out with. Well, the CIA documentation is not fake. This is a real CIA documentation talking about the Ark of the Covenant, but they're not telling you that it's actually in the skull, like I've been telling you. Now, one thing you got to understand about, Hollow Earth, he's talking about, see, the information they coming out with is nothing new. They just basically castigated the information and then told you that it was a conspiracy. All this time, they show you that the pyramids of Giza lead to Hollow Earth, right? You see the pyramids of Giza, and they're zigzag zig, right? Which is a personification of God. You go back into Hollow Earth. So these are different cave systems and pyramids that lead to Hollow Earth. You got Mount Impomio in Italy. Then you got another place in Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, where I'm close by, that leads to Hollow Earth. Then you got cave systems in Brazil, that leads to Hollow Earth. So the pyramids of Giza, they've been telling you that the tunnel systems of the chambers of the pyramids of Giza lead to Hollow Earth, right? They've been telling you the whole time. But like I said, they put the information out and then they try to be like, oh, it's a conspiracy. Now they want to come out with the truth because we're in the age of Aquarius. This is the time of revealing, to reveal what was hidden. Now, as I was telling you guys before, the pyramids is basically an energy of an interstellar vortex portal, because these vortexes are basically angular radiation. These are tetrahedrons, and these tetrahedrons create an energy because they understand the fact that the pyramid is a universal energy conductor and a transducer of grid systems, and the energy is operated by way of angles or angels of light or angles of light, and those angles of light activates the equal trilateral connection of the triangular system of the geometrical structure of the pyramid, which is basically the embodiment of light enlightenment when you have a quantum fluctuation or a crossover transition that creates an interface transition by way of the mental consciousness. So that is basically a multitude of the vortexes that is produced by the pyramids, right? Because it creates a force field, a torus field, right? That harmonizes with your genetics, because the pyramid is also associated with the sun and the moon when you're talking about the dualistic paradox, right? So in order to tap into the apex of it, you have to flame up the pinnacle. The pinnacle is the void of darkness. The void of darkness is when you find yourself back to the galactic center, which is basically the path of the middle way, which is the path of Malakut. right? So this is all associated with the precessional circle of the equinox when you're talking about the 24,000 year purification period, because the precessions and the pyramids go in tandem. Because what you got to look at right here, it says Alpha Draconis. The Alpha Draconis star system was being subjugated by the age of Aries, Pisces, and Taurus. That's the old age. Now we're in the age of Aquarius that is associated with the star Polaris, because the star Polaris gives power to Solomon's Temple or fire in the middle when you're talking about the pyramids. Because the star Polaris is actually the true galactical sun that basically predates the two celestial bodies of the sun and the moon within the firmament. Because the star Polaris is activated by way of the magnetosphere, because I told you that the pyramids have the ability to stream down intelligence, ether, electromagnetic radiation from the star Polaris, right? Because we're going back into the galactic center. Hold on for a second. All right. Now, as you can see right here, it shows you we transmuted from the Alpha Draconis star system, and now we're in the star Polaris. The star Polaris is in alignment with Aquarius, right? Because of the precessional circle, when it activates, that activates the cosmic clock or the cosmic pendulum. The cosmic pendulum by way of the age of Aquarius. So that's why when you look at the sigil system of the age of Aquarius, it shows you a picture of water pouring over the planet Earth, which is basically electromagnetic radiation, which is light, which is intelligence. And which thing is going to happen with that intelligence that harmonizes with the crystals in the brain? Because crystals absorb energy and they extract energy. And when it holds in the energy, you activate the epikinetic body or your epigenetics by way of the mind. So this is when we get into the Bathari gland. When you break down the etymological roots of the word bara, the prefix of it, it means to take you to a different space and time by way of the mind. Because a different space and time, when you go through the black hole, that's Ophiuchus, the black sun, right? So the age of Aquarius is associated with the star Polaris, because the star Polaris, the true sun, is actually going to be a part of the factors of when the firmament is going to break open and it's going to manipulate the electrical grid nodes on the planet, right? Because the star Polaris is basically the embodiment of Source. Source is activated by the power supply of the plasmic waters that is associated with the polarity consciousness of the black sun that contains electromagnetic processing that pulls energy from the black sun, which is basically the etheric network of dark matter energy. So you got to seek oneness in order to spiral out of the matrix. This is when you break out of the firmament, because like I said, human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. So this is why they're showing you the black sun in 2027, because I already did a transmission about that. And when you're talking about the prophecy of popes in the last video I put out, right? Because as you have the apex of religion starts to fall, that's when you unlock the true temple, the church, which is your physiology that is also connected to these pyramids. So this is why you see the Ethereum at the top resurrecting itself by way of the activation of the pyramids when you stream down its intelligence from the power supply source, which is the star Polaris. This is why they've been putting everything out in The Economist. This is one of the newest publications by The Economist, and they show you the square and the circle. In order to square the circle, that means that it operates by way of 360 degrees of the physical, 360 degrees of the spiritual. Because the physical is a representation of the square. The spiritual is a representation of the circle. They both equate to 360 degrees. Then you have two different factions of, that's going to create 720 degrees of knowledge, right? And 7 + 2 = 9. That's non-ether activation. So when you activate the non-ether, that's when you think outside the box, right? So that when you think outside the box, that's basically the embodiment of Metatron's cube, right? Who is Michael, or the spirit of Melchizedek. The spirit of Melchizedek is Tahuti, who is actually Thoth. When you're talking about the emerald tablets, that is also associated with hollow earth in these chambers within these pyramids, right? That's what this is talking about. That is basically the Trinity, because when you activate the spirit of Melchizedek, That's when you break out of the firmament, right? This is why you see this Nubian at the bottom breaking out of the firmament, because the firmament is basically comprised of the electrical grid node that controls all forms of technology. Because technology in itself is light code lockdown. And when you're no longer subjugated by light code lockdown, that's when you unlock the Tesla coils. When you're talking about the keys of the universe of the 3, 6, and the 9, because the 3 is a representation of people, places, and possessions that is subjugated by three-dimensional energy. The 6 is a representation of the moon that created the three-dimensional energy by way of external stimulation. The 9 is the hive mind of the God mind, which is basically a cosmic convergence that activates the non-ether, because that's going to be cultivated by the 144,000. 1 + 4 + 4 = 9, non-ether activation. Non-ether activation is when you go back to the galactic center by way of the mind. This is why the 9 is at the top, the 3 and the 6 is on the side, right? So now this is where we get into the galactic center. I'm going to show you this video, and it's basically the embodiment of the Milky Way general structure. And the Milky Way general structure works in tandem with the massive black hole that is also esoterically connected on an astrological level. So the Milky Way star constellation, which is basically the activation of the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate is where you get access to the energy of Ophiuchus, which is basically the black sun. This is why I had that right here. When you look at this picture that I created, shows you the black sun activation in 2027, right? Once you have the fall of religion. So when you break out of the Metatronic overlay, you can only do it by way of the mind, God mind. So now I'm going to show you about this video on how they've been showing you about, you know, the galactic center, or the Milky Way star constellation, which is also associated with the Earth zone. They've been showing you, and it's all in the news. They try to say it was some space rocket, some debris from that or whatever. Like I said, all they do is lie. They've been lying to you about religion. They've been lying to you about history. They've been lying to you about cosmic history. They've been lying to you about the laws of the universe. They've been lying to you about everything. So what makes you think they're going to tell you the truth about this video that I'm going to be showing you? Because I told you, it's a timeline that they basically following from every month, right? The Pope, he unlocked the cosmic keys of papacy to where we get back to the galactic center. The galactic center is the Milky Way star constellation, and I'm going to show you in the video. So it's not a coincidence that those two planetary alignments of January 21st and February 28th is also associated with this dynamic of the video that I'm going to be showing you. So I'm going to get into another video. If you love this type of information, put 999 in the chat for non-ether activation. Because we in that time where we got to activate those genes in order to get access to the galactic center and the Ark of the Covenant. So I'm going to play this video.
A glowing spiral which was visible over the night sky in Europe is believed to have been caused by a SpaceX rocket. The cloud-like shape was visible for several minutes. Confusing.
This is the galactic center. I told you, we're going back into the golden age, because the galactic center is a catalyst and an energy that pulls you right back to the star Polaris. This is where you get fifth dimensional energy from. The planet is actually going through a form of spiritual metamorphosis, which is an alchemical process of squaring a circle. The physical world is really about to have implications because it's merging in with the spiritual, right? Because they showing you all throughout the news media, westernized, the elements of westernized, society. All they're going to do is propagate lies. They're going to tell you lies every time. So this is the star Polaris, not the star Polaris, but this is the galactic center. They showing you.
Many who posted photographs to social media.
If you were amazed by that, wait till you see this, because if you were looking up at the sky last night, you might have suspected you were seeing your first UFO. Can I just say, this is, also, when you look at this sigil,
of the galactic center or the Milky Way star constellation, this is also associated with the swastika symbol because the swastika is also the embodiment of the black sun. The black sun is being used as a catalyst to go back to the galactic center. That's Ophiuchus. That's Jesus walking on water, resurrection, right? So that's why I said you got to understand the symbol and you got to understand the signs of the symbols. Because one thing you got to understand is that symbolism is going to be their downfall every time. So if you can understand cosmic symbolism, comedic symbolism, all these sigils that's associated with dark black magic, if you can understand the signs and the symbols of what they use in their corporations and companies, that's how you're going to get to the apex of the truth when you mix it in with science and etymology.
It happened. We haven't manufactured this.
It's not an April Fool. Yeah,
No.
this is a large blue and white spiral appearing in the night sky above parts of the UK about 8 o'clock last night. Did you see it? It was visible for several minutes before it then just faded away. So we've been trying to find out what it was.
Well, it's believed to have been caused by this.
Eh?
The SpaceX rocket that was in Florida launching, Falcon 9, it's reusable, from Elon Musk. It was on a classified United States government mission.
Have you been reading about this on a WhatsApp group? It's thought the spiral was formed when the rocket then ejected its leftover fuel and froze in the air due to the altitude. Light was then reflected off the frozen fuel, making it visible like that here on Earth.
And it's got stars and a heart shape around it. Oh, no, it did have. It's gone. But, yeah,
If you saw it last night...
That is basically, the Fibonacci sequence of the non-ether energy, right? That's connected to the energy of nature. Everything in nature intrinsically spirals up. We're spiraling up into the galactic center.
Right, we've got some great pictures, but if you've got any images you'd like to send us as well, there's the number. WhatsApp us some pictures. Tell us where you were, and we'll try and build up a sense of where it was brightest and best. But it really is. Never seen anything like it before.
Sure they weren't shooting a Marvel movie in Oxfordshire? Are we
It's
sure?
like the Batman thing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a little bit, isn't it?
Also, this is a crazy sight. Look at that right there. A mysterious spiral appearing in the middle of the Northern Lights in Alaska.
They tell you that the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, they just tell you that it's some type of phenomenon, right? Because the Northern Lights is basically the embodiment of ether. Because one thing you got to understand about the inception of creation in the universe is that the Earth zone is also in connection with, I forgot what it's called. The Earth zone is in connection. The Milky Way star constellation is in alignment with the Grand Canyon. They just had an earthquake in the Grand Canyon not too long ago. I think it was probably about 3 days ago. So when you understand the inception of creation, you got to understand the beginning points of how everything took place to where it translates to everything right now. So in the inception of time, I told y'all about the extraction of plutonium bombs because the planet Earth and the moon was basically working in harmony together, right? It was a moon called Shesky, which is basically the original moon. So by way of the extraction of plutonium bombs, because we had the mothership in our atmosphere, the electromagnetic G-force of the mothership made the plutonium bombs having an extraction process to where it basically broke the planet Earth in half. That's when they used the mothership has its own cosmic ecosystem. They projected a planet or a sun or a light ball of energy to planet Earth inside the planet where the Grand Canyon is at. That was basically the embodiment of the black sun because they needed that energy of their sun that they extracted inside our planet to basically heal itself and revitalize itself. So that's why the Grand Canyon is basically in alignment with the Milky Way star constellation. The Milky Way star constellation pulls in ether. So that's why Rashad Jamal, he said that when you can go through the Grand Canyon, you can actually get to Egypt, right? All this is esoterically connected, right? Because the Grand Canyon is comprised of interstellar vortex portals. Those interstellar vortex portals goes from the pyramids of Giza or to the Grand Canyon or to the Grand Canyon to ancient Kemet or Egypt, right? So that's why you got to understand what took place in the past in order to understand what's going on right now.
To say it happened just before 2 a.m. Saturday, lasted for just a couple of minutes. Scientists say that spiral was likely caused by a rocket engine exhaust from a SpaceX mission that launched Friday night. So the launch passed over Alaska, and they say that spiral was likely created by water.
That's all ether right there. That is not the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights is all ether. It's the ether amalgamating with the galactic center or the Milky Way star constellation.
Vapor in the engine exhaust freezing at high altitudes and then catching the sunlight. It's an amazing sight on top of an amazing sight.
If you were looking up at the sky last night and it was clear, you might have suspected you were seeing your very first UFO. Here's why.
Yeah, a large blue and white spiral appeared in the night sky above parts of the UK about 8 o'clock yesterday evening. It was visible for several minutes before fading, and we thought we'd try to ask this morning, what was it?
Look at that. That picture's astonishing. It's believed to have been caused by this. This is the SpaceX rocket launch in Florida. The Falcon 9 reusable rocket from Elon Musk was on a classified United States government mission. This is not going to help, is it? All the conspiracy theorists thought the spiral was formed when the rocket ejected its leftover fuel, which froze due to the altitude.
And then light was reflected off the frozen fuel, making it visible on Earth. And lots of you spotted it. You've been sending in your pictures, which I'll show you now.
That's incredible. From Chris in southwest Scotland. That's absolutely gorgeous. There's another one coming up now. Cameron in County Durham took that one.
Not just in northern part.
They up there talking about how beautiful and, it's a celestial phenomenon, but they don't know that the galactic center is going to be the energy that basically destroys the world that they basically created by way of colonization and imperialism. Oh, it's cool, but you're going to be crying later. I'll tell you that much. Like I said, Illuminati, I'm on to you. I'm on to you.
To the UK, Matt sent us a picture from Essex where he caught a glimpse. Look at that. And Shirley in Derbyshire was out with her phone. Well done, Shirley. They are great, aren't they? I think
incredible.
I didn't see it. I wish I'd stayed out.
And one last one from Megan in Northamptonshire. Stayed out. Were you out last night, John?
No, I was inside with the curtains closed at 8 o'clock. But now I know what I was missing out on. Matt's with us this morning. I guess the fact that it was clear skies in a lot of places last night really helped with the visibility.
View for it, wasn't it? It's almost like a portal to another dimension, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't say that, Matt.
Something, let's be honest.
What is that?
Is it meant to be there? Yeah, it's from space. Do you recognize that? What? Yeah, it's in my space book. That's the Milky Way.
No, it's not. What is?
Even a little girl, you know what I'm saying, she can understand that's the Milky Way. They gonna tell you in the news, they telling you it's something else. The Milky Way star constellation is the galactic center when you go through the Golden Gate. Point blank, period.
Yeah.
But yeah, that spiral was caused by the rocket fuel because the rocket was actually rotating at the time as it ejected it.
Yes.
So that's why you get the spiral out
You get
there.
that shape?
Yeah.
Don't go too far away, Matt, because we want to talk to you about this next story.
Yeah, luckily, clear skies in lots of places last night. And if you were looking up at the sky, you might well have seen what you thought was a UFO.
Yes, you weren't going mad. Lots of you have been getting in touch after seeing a large blue and white spiral that appeared above parts of the UK at around 8 o'clock. It's believed to have been caused by a SpaceX rocket launch in Florida.
Yeah, it was a Falcon 9 reusable rocket from Elon Musk's space company. Matt will explain a bit more about how it produced these pictures. But look, loads of you sent in these pictures.
Let's have a look at them.
Yeah. This one's from Chris in southwest Scotland. Look, so that, for real, appeared in the sky last night.
That really is it. That's not like AI or anything. This was Cameron's view in County Durham. Look at that.
Consistent,
Yes,
I think it's
very
fair
consistent.
to say. But it's not just in the northern parts of the UK. In Essex, Matt got this glimpse.
And then Shirley in Derbyshire took this next picture. There we can see.
And another
Pretty
one,
much
but we've
everywhere.
had loads. This one is from Northamptonshire and from Megan. Thank you all so much for these pictures and for admitting that you were a bit confused about what had caused it.
Matt, what had caused it?
It was, of course, Falcon 9 space rocket with SpaceX. It was taking a satellite into space, departed from Florida a few hours earlier. But, of course, at some point, way up, it's about 50 miles up in the atmosphere, those two depart from each other, and the rocket, being a reusable one, returns to Earth. And to make that a safe return, it gets rid of its fuel. And so what you saw was the fuel being ejected from Falcon X. It's about minus 70 degrees up there. Yeah.
I build my credit with my rent payment for free.
Rotating as it starts to turn round and come down, and that causes the sort of spiral shape as the fuel's ejected.
I think this is a speeded up.
The Falcon X rocket is actually
everything that is applied to non-ether spirals up. Everything that's connected to nature spirals up. That's when you understand the cymatic frequencies of the frequencies and the fractions of light is also applied to wave patterns, right? Or when you have your calic or whatever you got in your head, the spiral in the middle right there. That is connected to the Fibonacci sequence, the ether. The ether is tether connected to the galactic center because the ether is actually going to make you harmonize to activate those energies when you're talking about the Christ consciousness, right?
rotating as it starts to turn round and come down, and that causes the sort of spiral shape as the fuel's ejected.
I think this is a speeded up footage that came
that was
from...
the real thing.
Well,
That is the real
it is
thing.
the real
Oh,
thing.
okay.
This has come from Croatia, and it's 6 minutes compressed to like 30 seconds or something. But it shows you,
just how bright it was.
Brightness,
because you're up so high, it is reflecting from the sun. The sun's reflections on those ice crystals.
So,
cause it to be
are
so
we
bright.
saying that this is fuel? So
It is
therefore, that's
fuel.
not. I know it might look amazing. That's not great, is it?
It's not great, but it does just turn into water vapour
Right.
and disappear. So it sublimates straight from ice to water vapour whilst it's up there.
Okay.
Sublimation.
That's my word of the day.
What's sublimation?
It's
Changes?
just the process. You have evaporation, melting, all that sort of thing. But when you go from ice to water vapour, it's called sublimation. There you go. That's
Well
my
done.
GCSE.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
All that time on BBC Bite Size. Well worth it.
Scientists from all over the world are trying to figure out what caused a mysterious blue light to spiral in the sky over Norway on Wednesday. CBS News correspondent Sheila McVicker has the latest on the mystery. Sheila, good morning.
Good morning, Harry. Mysterious light indeed. A light appearing high in the Arctic sky, baffling those who saw it and exciting a lot of comment. Early yesterday morning, just before dawn, this appeared in the Norwegian sky.
Hva I helvete er det der?
That's Norwegian for what the heck is that? A blue light, small at first, growing into a spiral and then disappearing into what appeared to be a black hole. In the northern community of Trondelag and on a Norwegian military base, cell phones snapped, video cameras rolled, and bloggers got busy.
A spiral of light moving and then suddenly stopping.
There's still a lot of
That's how you know they lying, because if this phenomenon took place in 2009, they wasn't shooting no SpaceX rockets in 2009. But now all of a sudden they telling you in 2025 it's a space rocket. Come on, man. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
speculation to what it could be.
The Arctic sky is no stranger to atmospheric phenomena. The northern lights and the seasonal flight of Santa, just two. But the explanation here apparently lies across the border with the Russian military and another failed missile launch. A respected Russian daily first reported this morning that the third stage of a sophisticated Bulava intercontinental missile failed. And space experts point to the spiraling of this missile as it failed to launch properly as an explanation for the shape seen over Norway, the halo, they say, produced by missile fuel. The Russian Defense Ministry has just reported that a test launch of a Bulava missile from a submarine in the White Sea failed. It's an embarrassing failure for Russia. Of 12 known tests, at least 7 have been unsuccessful. The Bulava is a high-tech new generation weapon capable of carrying multiple warheads up to 5,000 miles. And with those failures, it may now be on the verge of being scrapped. Harry?
Now, That's the basis of that video, and we're going to get back to the presentation at hand. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Now, everything that I showed you in that video is basically the embodiment of the Milky Way's general structure, right? That takes you to a different space and time by way of the black hole, which is also associated with the black dot, the black chakra, which is the pineal gland, Ophiuchus. Now, the reason this is happening is because it's going to manipulate the ley line grid system, or the energy grid system, or the electrical grid node, which is basically called the net of Indra, right? This is why they call it a planned net, because the word net is a form of entrapment to trap souls here. That's what the ley lines in the energy vortexes is basically for. The ley line grid systems is also known as the Draconian reptilian net, right? They want to trap you here by way of your emotions, right? So when you break out of the prison planet, right? You break out of the prison planet by going back to the galactic center, right? So this is why a sacred symbol of Nut was a ladder to heaven used by Osiris to enter the heavenly skies, right? Resurrection, right? Because I told you Ophiuchus is Jesus walking on water. Jesus is associated with Osiris when you understand ancient Kemet, right? But really, we already know when you get to the apex of it, it's really talking about Isis, because Isusis is actually applied to Jesus, but that's a whole different transmission. We just giving the information out in the form of context to where we're tapping into information that people already know on a surface level, and we mix it in with the esoteric too. So we want to hit all spectrums of truth to where you can understand what's going on according to their timeline. Now I told you. Now, when you go back to the galactic center, this is what you see at the top, right? This is also associated with Project Sunstreak. This is basically the sigil of it that is also applied to Project Stargate. Now, they built the Stargate in Detroit, and it says transcending. So what you're looking at is the geographical blueprint map that is also associated with the galactic center. And this is a representation of a pyramid, because the pyramids, when they turned on the Stargates, right? This is why they came out with Project Stargate. Same thing takes place at this other energy vortex portal, or this point of origin in Detroit. Because one thing you got to understand about Detroit is basically in alignment with 6 other cities that's in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation. So this is why the great majority of your master teachers come from Detroit, actually, right? When you're talking about, Detroit Red, which is Malcolm X, you had Noble Drew Ali. Some of his first temple was in Detroit. Then, like I said, you had a multitude of energy that comes from that geographical area. Why? That's like I said, this is why they building the Stargates, right? In Detroit. Because the Big Dipper star constellation has the ability to stream in intelligence from the magnetosphere that causes the interface transition when the portals is turned on. So, as I was telling you guys before, this is also associated with Stargate Project, and the Stargate Project was basically Project Sunstreak. So Project Sunstreak, or Project Stargate, is being facilitated by the corporate infrastructure when you're talking about these enterprises like BlackRock, TikTok, and all this other stuff, right? This is why TikTok subjugates a lot of the truth according to their platforms. So, hold on. So also you got to understand that this is also associated with, the 47 problem of Euclid, because the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy and the pillar of balance is basically the Holy Trinity. That is the only Holy Trinity when you master the dualistic paradox and you follow the path of the middle way to get back to the spiral of the Kundalini energy that spirals in with the Fibonacci sequence of the galactic center, just like when I showed you on that video, because as above, so below, right? So you got your vibration has to be harmonizing with these energies that's coming in. Because when it's able to harmonize with the energies coming in, that's when you unlock the body of Christ, which is Christ consciousness. And then that's when you go back to the gates of the temple of wisdom. The temple of wisdom is also associated with the 47 problem of Euclid, right? Because 4 + 7 = 11. And the 11 are the two pillars in masonry, which is the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy, right? So now when you look at this from a geometrical mathematical sequence, this is all connected to the Poincare conjunction. The Poincare conjunction is applied to the manifold of the space-time continuum, meaning that it's a mathematical sequence in space and time that is also applied to the 47 problem of Euclid, which is basically a form of 0-point energy. And that threefold manifold travels on 0-point energy fields, because when you look at the Euclidean, it's applied to the soul, right? Which is ether. And it sits at 0-point energy, right? So that's why I said the 47 problem of Euclid is the comedic mathematical sequence of the Pythagorean theorem that is based on man, woman, and child, right? Which is basically the embodiment of balance by way of a matriarch and the celestial alignments. Because when you look at the 47 problem of Euclid, it's basically the sacred geometry of the pyramids that harmonizes with our genetics. So this is why I said, when you square the circle, right, that's when you have things like Neptune and Aries amalgamating together, the physical embodying the spiritual at the same time. So when you look at this, the geometrical structure of the Giza Plateau, it's basically talking about how the 47 problem of Euclid is applied to the mathematical sequence of the 47 problem of Euclid, right? Because the pyramids is basically a structure that harmonizes with a convergence point. And that convergence point operates with, the Orion star constellation, right? So the pyramids of Giza, the Exen pyramids, you got the pyramids of Mexico, they all harmonize. And this is all geometrics, right? This is the sacred geometry of the mathematical sequence of the universe. So when you're looking at the 47 problem of Euclid, you got 3 different types of squares. But these squares is a representation of the 3 pyramids that sit at the Giza Plateau. So what you're looking at is man, woman, and child. Isis, Osiris, and Horus, right? This is why you see Osiris sitting on the square, right? He's sitting on the square because that means that it's the miracle in stone. The miracle in stone, this is why he had access by going through the chambers, the oracle chambers, right? Because it's applied to the tetragrammaton of the Pythagorean theorem. Man, woman, and child. Man, woman, and child is basically the embodiment of balancement. Now, before we get out of here, I'm going to give a brief synopsis about everything that I was talking about. So we in that time period, ladies and gentlemen. So now the basis of this esoteric synopsis is basically predicated upon the fact that everything that they're telling you on an external level is basically taking place on an internal level. The Ark of the Covenant is the Sephnoid bone. The Crystal City is inside your neurological faculties when you're talking about the magnetites and the dendrites. When you're talking about the pyramids and hollow earth, right? The pyramids is fire in the middle, which is Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple translates to the soul of man. So the soul of man is associated with the star Polaris as you get back to the galactic center that pulls the planet into a 5th dimensional energy. So when you also talking about hollow earth is actually comprised of the city called Argartha. Argartha is associated with Golgotha, which is the place of the skull where Jesus was resurrected. or where he was crucified on Mount Calvary, right? Because Golgotha is Agatha, right? So this is all talking about our genetics. Now, some of this might be, taking place on a physical level, but everything is based on the esoteric essence of internal stimulation. Your genetics is being turned on. That's what they're basically trying to tell you, right? So this is basically the embodiment of the whole presentation. I'm just showing you guys, that they've been telling you, all throughout, monotheistic, religious systems, which is European mythology. They've been telling you guys about, the endocrine system. They've been telling you about the chakra system. Just like, for instance, when you go to the book of Genesis, they talking about how Eve came from Adam's rib. When you're talking about a rib, it's actually talking about deoxyribonucleic acid, because ribo is associated with rib. So that's a form of genetic mutation, but the story is actually flipped around. Adam came from Eve because Eve had 2.8% of her chromosomes, and she created man by way of genetic mutation because the woman has the mitochondrial DNA to activate the prokaryotes. The prokaryote is the first organism found in the universe that is also associated with the galactic center. The galactic center is harmonizing with the magnetosphere as you get back to the star Polaris. So this is why I said it's all corresponding with genetic mutation. They want you to look at things from a religious standpoint because they want you to look outside of yourself. Everything's internal. The crystal city, the black sun, Ark of the Covenant, the pyramid, it's all in you, right? That means that these monolithic structures are basically a microcosm of who you are. We the macrocosm, right? That's what you must understand, because everything they put out in the news is all misinformation and technology. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. End of transmission.
10:14.